without nobody signed their name, but also asked about what would you like to see in tax reform?
I would like to see lower rates for individuals at all levels, particularly middle-income families, low-income families. I'd like to see lower rates for the business community. You have to remember, a lot of businesses are LLCs and S-corps. It's just pass-through. I think most business tax savings are going to end up getting reinvested right back in economic growth, in wage growth. I think that there are a lot of there's a lot of giveaways in that tax code. I think that it needs to be simplified substantially. I would like to see, if you are a W-2 employee, I would like to see you not have to go see an accountant. Because I just think it's become so complex and there's just so many little deductions and credits that it's just impossible to do your own taxes. Let me rephrase that. I think it's very difficult. It's more challenging now to do your own taxes than it was 5 years ago, than it was 10 years ago, than it was 20 years ago. And the more complex it is, you know who it hurts? It hurts the little guy and the little lady. It doesn't hurt conglomerate company A or conglomerate company B. They have all the tax lawyers and accountants and consultants working for them, and they benefit from this stuff. And I don't think the American public benefits from it. So I would like to see lower rates. I would like to see a simplified tax system. Easier said than done, but you're going to see, I think, a dramatic shift by Republicans, and we're the governing party. We're trying to we control the House, we control the Senate, control the President. Not to control the President. But if you're going to see tax reform get done, it's going to be a Republican-driven plan. I actually think there's a higher likelihood of success if you can get centrist Democrats in there who see and believe in the argument that you will have economic growth through tax reform. We will see though. Those would be my principles.
Ray Boster, Middlebrook Township asks, why won't you support defunding the United Nations?
Did I vote to not? I don't understand. Do you want to? Any follow-up on that one, right? Well, let me say this. I think all the countries that don't pay into NATO should pay into NATO. I think that the Obama administration sometimes outsourced foreign policy making to the United Nations, which I disagreed with. I think the United Nations trying to be the arbiter of peace between Israel and Palestine is misplaced. And I don't think America should conduct its foreign policy through the United Nations. I don't know how much we actually fund the United Nations, but we do put money into it. And having said all that, I'm not so sure we walk away from the United. I mean, you know, all the other countries are part of the UN. That doesn't mean I don't like our country to be at a table and decide we're going to get up and walk away. I just don't think that that is good for a lot of the multilateral, complicated challenges that we have, including North Korea, which is extremely dangerous, and it's only going to become more dangerous unless China and other countries around in that area, in that region, decide to step up and hold North Korea accountable. The same goes in Syria, where the Russian sanctions is actually, it's driven at what they were doing and meddling in terms of the election, but a lot of that is Russia trying to prop up the Assad regime and cause further instability in the region, which is not only dangerous in Syria, it's also dangerous for everything that surrounds Syria and Israel and all the other countries, and that only creates a further powder keg and only emboldens Iran to do more dirty deeds and sponsor more terrorism in the region. So I just think there's so much happening in a lot of regions of the country that I would not suggest that the United States should walk away from the UN, but I also don't think that we should be led by the UN in terms of America's interests. Follow up on that, Ray? Go ahead, Corey.
Go back to Trump questions. Knowing that your constituency is moderate.
Well, that's not necessarily true.
Yeah,
If you throw everybody in the pond and wash it all out, it would probably be a moderate voter. But we have very liberal and very conservative voters too.
This is, I forgot to mention, from Brett Mazzaro.
Okay.
Anyway, knowing that your constituency is moderate, when do you and like-minded Republicans cut ties with the White House? I look at things on an issue-by-issue basis, right? I've
stated policy-wise where I disagree with this president on multiple occasions. I don't think that stops a rubber stamp from being outside. There are times when I think, look, I think if the president supports tax reform the way that I think that it should be done, good. I think that he wants to see tax reform. I think I do it, it's on a case-by-case basis. Look, I am not beholden to anyone except the voters of this district who have given me a 2-year term to go to Washington, D.C. and vote my conscience with your input. And there are times when your input could be something that changes how I vote or changes the context within which I view something, or I could listen to you and say, well, I don't agree with that, I'm still going to vote this A rather than B. That's the way our republic was designed for a 2-year term. There are going to be times when my vote bothers the most conservative of Republicans. There's going to probably be a few more times where my vote bothers the more liberal voters in my district. But I think what I owe you and what you should expect to be of me is that every single time that I vote, I have read both sides of the issue, that I have evaluated it, that I have thought it through, and that I have voted the way that I think is right for my district based upon my values, my philosophy, and what's best for this district. And remember, I'm a federal official, one of 435, in 1/2 of 1/3 of the federal government, before you bring in the regulatory agencies and everything else. What's best for this country? You're supposed to disagree with me some of the time, by the way. Like, we're not all supposed to agree. You're never supposed to agree with your federal official all the time. You shouldn't. And that's one of the reasons why I think having town halls is very healthy, because you're supposed to tell me that you disagree with me, right? And I'm supposed to learn from every single one of you. And hopefully there are times when I explain how I voted to you, you realize that, yeah, you might disagree with me or you thought something, but the reason why I voted a certain way was actually something other than what you thought. That's how I view my job. That's how I think the Constitution was designed for a member of Congress to serve in a 2-year term. Let's go another 50. Let's go a little while. Go ahead. Look, come on up here and ask a question. Yeah, come on.
That was actually my question, and I was rushed. I was late getting.
Go ahead. What's your name? And stand up and ask.
That was my
okay.
question.
Yeah.
Just to clarify, I wasn't talking about policy. I really, talking to you today, I really appreciate that you're looking at issues on an
individual
issue basis. My question wasn't related to issues, and it wasn't worded well at all. I apologize for that. I'm looking more at the circus of the White House, the Russian investigation, and I know
the Boy Scout speech, Scaramucci.
Yes, and
again, believe me, I get it.
I'm kind of looking at you and like-minded Republicans
right.
to lead a groundswell to say enough's enough. And your votes are your votes, and I respect that you're looking at things objectively
right.
and but looking at it in terms of just the circus that it is.
Yeah.
How close is that? How close are you and like-minded Republicans to kind of addressing the elephant in the room?
It's a good question. It's a fair. Look, I think in every single town hall I have, that has to be a question, right? I, generally speaking, think that it is in the best interest of my constituency and myself as an elected official, with what my constitutional obligations are, as well as just what I do on a day-to-day basis, not to weigh in daily on what the president says or does if it is of the variety that probably drives some of you crazy, right? Or angers you or is offensive. And the reason is because I then become a pundit. And then every single time something flares up, I have to be called to answer for it. And if I don't, then that must mean I agree with it. So it becomes a very slippery slope. It becomes a cul-de-sac, if you will. But I probably do offer my opinion on that more than you realize. I call into radio stations on a regular basis. I have constituents meet me in the office, and if people are here who have met me in the office, I mean, I let it fly. But what I don't do is like go to Twitter and come up with something clever on what he said, or do a Facebook post, or issue a press release. Because number one, you always have to go out and like, did he really say that? Are there dual meanings to that? Because let's be honest, sometimes he says something and it can mean a couple different things. Sometimes he doesn't. Sometimes there's a background to that that I may not be aware of, or somehow somebody might have cleaned it up after the fact. All that takes a lot of time, right? And it's not my job to play pundit when he is pontificating and stuff. It's just not. Having said that, during the campaign, the Muslim ban, the Khan, the way he responded there, the Billy Bush incident, sometimes that something is so egregious or gets to so much the fundamental character of what I think is right and wrong that I do say something. I mean, I said something, I was on radio recently about the Boy Scout speech. But I also think that me being, that's your job, right? I think that's every voter should speak up when they feel like speaking up and when they should. I do sometimes, but to me, I have to be policy focused on this. And there's times when I've said things supportive of this policy. I think, here's something that he said in the past that's controversial that I totally agree with. I don't necessarily want countries to know what I will and won't do. I think that that's a pretty smart way of approaching foreign policy.